Good day and welcome to Insight. Today we focus on a type of research that all men must now gather around the television sets. And all women who support men, and that's all women, must gather around the television set. We hope to learn a lot today. We've invited a very special guest, someone who I buck up on recently and heard about some research she's doing. And I thought, well, let's bring it to Insight so we can focus on this. We're talking about cell research, we're talking about prostate cancer research and all the attendant factors. We have with us Dr. Simone BADAL McCREATH. Welcome to the Insight.
Thanks, Michael Sharp, for having me here.
You are involved in a very special type of research, but before we knock off on that, I'm correct that only males have prostate. I'm correct that it is very important in terms of procreation, and it's also very important in terms of urination. What else can you tell me about the prostate that is important?
I think you've covered it, Dr. Sharp. So the prostate gland, it's a walnut-sized gland that is situated between the penis and the bladder. And through that gland, you have the urethra that runs through it. It also produces and secretes fluid that help to maintain your sperms, ensure that they're healthy, they're lively, they're happy.
Yes.
And so, whilst it may not have that significant contribution as your brain, it's still important to every man.
Yes. What happens? What causes? One of the things I hear that age is a critical factor in the whole issue of prostate cancer. What is prostate cancer? How do you get it? What happens there? What causes that?
We're still trying to figure that out. We know that genetic factors play a role in the causation of cancers in general. The fact is that we have different checkpoint systems in our bodies that ensure that cells reproduce normally. And when these checkpoint systems are affected, then the cells don't multiply normally. They start to rapidly, sometimes, and uncontrollably divide, multiply. And so they tend to form what we call tumors. Not all tumors are cancerous. You have benign tumors, you have malignant tumors. A benign tumor tends to be confined to one spot, and so it facilitates easy removal. The moment it gets malignant, it starts to spread, metastasize.
That's a big word, yes.
So that is pretty much the case for prostate cancer. That prostate gland begins to enlarge. You have benign prostatic hyperplasia. That means it's enlarged, but it hasn't started to invade neighboring tissue. And so it facilitates. The urologist, the surgeon goes in, takes it out. And so, you then will be free of that prostate cancer problem.
Yes. Let's jump to it. How do you know, as a man, what are the symptoms that you can say, listen, I'm having a problem here, I should go check this out?
Urination, it becomes difficult to urinate. You may have pain in your pelvic area, your stool, it may affect that. And so, however, it's important to note that in the early stages of the disease, you may not feel anything. And so that is why it is urologists encourage men to do regular checkups. The moment you hit 40, go do your digital rectal exams.
DRE, all right? Tell us what the DRE is. That's why most men don't do it.
Exactly, and that's why most men get in trouble. Yes. Because the moment you recognize that there is something abnormal in the early stages, it is very easy for you to be cured of that. So the digital rectal exam, you go to your doctor, specifically your urologist. They insert a lubricated finger inside your rectum, and they feel the prostate gland, and they feel, does this feel normal? Does it feel abnormal? Is it firm? Is it enlarged? And so from that, they can say, okay, something is a little off here. We need to do a biopsy. You also can do your PSA.
All right.
Yes.
Give me biopsy and then give me PSA. What is the biopsy and what is the PSA?
Well, the biopsy, they insert a very fine needle into the prostate, and they take it to the lab. Your pathologist will look at the integrity of the cells. Do these cells look normal? Do they look abnormal? The pathologist can then advise the urologist that, hey, something is off here. This person needs some attention. We're identifying cancer, be it stage 1, 2, 3, 4. They can do that. The PSA, short for protein specific antigen, that's a blood test. So the doctor would take a sample of your blood and he would assess for the presence of PSA. So your prostate produces PSA. However, there are normal levels in the blood that are produced if you are cancer free. If there is the presence of cancer, then your PSA levels may go up. The high PSA levels doesn't always determine cancer. It could be just inflammation. And so both digital rectal examinations and PSA are recommended together to give you a more accurate depiction of the presence or not of cancer.
Okay. But you suggested doing both of them.
It is recommended to do both. But of both of them, the DREs are considered more accurate.
Before we get into yours, how often should you do this? Is it once a month, once a year, twice a year? Or what's the recommended?
I think at least once a year. I believe it's at least. You can consult your urologist on the frequency, but I believe the moment you hit 40, you should do your DREs yearly.
Your
digital rectal exam.
Not the PSA?
Yes, do your DREs.
Wow, that's when your doctor gives you the finger, right?
Right.
That's not a bad word at all.
It's not. It's your friend.
It's your friend
Yes.
that might save your life. But you mentioned that early detection may very well save your life. But is it normally in the prostate a slow-moving cancer, or is it fast-moving?
Both.
Ooh.
So some of them are slow moving and some of them tend to be more aggressive. And if you can identify the aggressive cancer in the early days, it saves you future challenges, and that is why you want to start testing early. Because the moment something is off, before it gets to the aggressive stage, you can stop it. You can prevent it from getting there.
Okay. Research time. What are you researching?
So, Michael has been asking me a lot of questions about prostate cancer. I'm a basic scientist researcher, so my research began looking at the efficacy of Jamaican natural products in terms of their potential anti-cancer properties. So can these products kill cancer cells? That is one area that I looked at. The second area I investigated was, can these same products prevent cancer from happening? Now, at the end of that research, we identified several other natural products that, one, killed cancer cells effectively, and we were able to compare their effect to known chemotherapy drugs that we take. And we found that several of our compounds were just as effective as these drugs. Some of them were even more effective, and some of them were safer. We also found that some of them inhibited specific enzymes that play a role in cancer causation. And so if they can inhibit these enzymes, then they can block the onset of cancer. So we found a nice story. The data is published. So the next step would be in drug development to take these compounds to preclinical models. What are preclinical models? Simply, we want to test them in animals, and specifically rats. We don't have that facility at UA. And so in the process of writing up a grant application, I started to sift through my data. And I realized that the tools I had used to assess the efficacy of these compounds, their potential anti-cancer properties, all these tools were Caucasian tools. These tools are called cell lines. So we simply grew the cells, expose the cells to the products, and look to see if these products kill these cancer cells. However, all the cells that I looked at were Caucasian cells. I then said, okay, why don't we purchase our own cells? So I looked at the catalog. You have different companies overseas that you can purchase cells from.
Human cells.
Human cells. You can also purchase animal cells too. But our focus, we wanted it to be more applicable to humans, because why are we going to animals? And I realized that over 90% of the cells that are made available to us as researchers around the world are Caucasian cell lines. And so then I started to think, then how well will these products translate to treating cancers that arise in Jamaica, cancers that arise in the Caribbean? Clearly the efficacy would be different. So why don't we develop our own cell lines? And so that birthed what I'm doing now. There are a lot of cancers. So what do I start with? I'm going to look at the cancers that are of most concern to us. The two top cancers are prostate and breast. And so I started with breast. And we are in the process of completing that, and we're 90% there. It will be the first cell line from Jamaica. It will be the first cell line from the Caribbean, a cell line of African ethnicity or African descent. And we can sell these cell lines, so that's a source of income.
SELL, the CELL.
SELL. We can use these cell lines to understand the biology of the tumors from which they originate. So why is prostate cancer is of major concern to Jamaican men, to men of African descent? The fact is that the incident rates of prostate cancer is much higher among men of African descent. Men of African descent are 2.5 times more likely to die from prostate cancer than a Caucasian man. So we need to understand why. Why is this happening? And not just understand why, but we also need to be able to develop medicines that can treat these cancers.
You're going to ask me why I'm stopping you, but we need to take a break. That's why. But she has opened a can of cells. And wow, we're going to drill down and find out what's going on here, because it seems as if the future is a little brighter. We'll be right back on Insight. Welcome back to Insight. We're focusing on cell line research with emphasis on prostate cancer and now breast cancer. Because just before the break, she said they have come up with a cell line that, I hope I'm interpreting her correctly, she'll correct me, that 90% of the way as the whole issue of breast cancer.
Prostate.
But help me with this issue of cell line, doc. I just, in a lab, I get the sense that a cell line is what? How should I focus? What's a cell line? And now we have cell line that represent women of African descent?
Men.
Men, no, the breast one. Was it the breast one?
No, we're working on developing prostate cancer cell lines.
Okay, so
we haven't started the breast yet.
You haven't started.
We're in the process
so
of.
You have got 90% on the.
We are 90% complete. What does this mean?
Yes.
There are different steps or processes that are taken to develop a cell line. What is a cell line? A cell line is simply the immortal growth of the cells outside of the body, be it a human being or an animal.
The immortal growth.
So these cells are growing indefinitely.
Okay.
So the first human cell line was developed in 1950-1951 from a woman called Henrietta Lacks. As a matter of fact, there's a show on HBO that documents her journey. For over 50 years that we know of, scientists tried in earnest to develop cell lines because they understand the importance or the implications of having cell lines. It will fast track the way that we can understand diseases, fast track the way that we can produce different drugs. And so when these cell lines were developed, a vaccine for poliovirus was occurred. Further understandings of cancers in general, further drugs were developed because of these cell lines. Now, so cell lines provide, these are tools that we can utilize to understand the cells, different chemical processes that occur in the body. We can use them to develop drugs. Now, as I said before, I didn't say this specifically, of the 200 prostate cancer cell lines that exist to us as researchers to research, 98% of them are Caucasian. And the other 2% are from African American men. So we don't have any that represent the Caribbean region. Now, when you develop a cell line, what processes are involved? First, you need to partner with a clinician who takes or gives you some of the tumor. So they go in, they do surgery, they take out the tumor, we go there, we collect the tumor. Everything has to be done under sterile conditions. We take this to the lab, and now we need to disaggregate or disintegrate this tumor into individual cells. We need to ensure that they remain alive and that they're free of infection.
The cells remain alive.
Right, so we need them alive. We need
to keep them alive once you've removed the tumor.
So you have different means. We put them in what we call media, which supplements them with the necessary nutrients. So whatever nutrients that the body, we give them that. We know they need the right pH condition, they need the right temperature. So in understanding what we need, our cells need, we pretty much give them that environment. So we mirror that environment. However, it's very easy for the cells to be contaminated. And when the cells become contaminated, then we can't use them, and eventually they die. So that is one of the biggest hurdles or stumbling blocks that we have to overcome to ensuring these cells survive indefinitely. So we take them out, we disintegrate them, we then leave them, we continue to watch them, feed them, give them whatever they need to survive. And so when the first set of cells survive and start to grow, we call those primary explants.
Primary explants.
Right, so when those cells grow and they almost occupy the entire surface that they're growing on, we then take them up and we put them on 2 or 3 surfaces. If they survive that round, they are called secondary explants. We take that now, go a little further, they get to tertiary explants. Then they go further, they get to extended explants. And once they reach the extended explants, we then, the chances of them being immortal is increased. And the moment they get to the immortal stage, we call them a cell line. So we have grown them up to the extended explants.
No, just go straight to a cell line.
No,
you have
and
to
this it takes months. It can take you 3 to 4 months once everything is going well to generate an extended explant. Because sometimes it takes the cells like a month before they get to secondary explant level.
Tertiary,
and then right. And in an ideal, you have different scenarios. You can have cells that are naturally immortal, cancer cells like Henrietta Lacks' cells, the cells that we still use today. Those cells, cervical cells actually, they are naturally immortal cells. And then you have other cells you have to induce immortalization. So for us now, we are at the extended explant level, and we now need to immortalize the cells to be able to categorize them.
Extended
explant level.
Yes, level now. As it relates to prostate.
Prostate.
Is that why you're saying 90%?
90% of the way complete.
And it's being done locally?
Yes, sir. Well, yes. My student also, we have a collaboration with Fox Chase Cancer Center. And we wanted to learn how to make these cells immortal. So he went overseas to gather that training, and so he's back now, and he's going to utilize that training on our cells here. And even though we're 90% complete with those, we're also still taking fresh tissue samples, because we don't just want to create one prostate cancer cell line. We want to create as many as we can, so that we can capture the different groups that exist here as much as we can.
Help me with this now, because you know I'm fascinated by all of this. The whole issue of, well, people not coming to your office and you're saying, well, I'll go and take this and this, but you're now doing the background work, the hard stuff on which others can build on. Once you have this, and it's immortal, for people in the Caribbean,
That is right. So it would be
where there's a
representative
whole lot of incidents of
of prostate cancer.
Would this be a first?
Yes, it would be. It would be the first Caribbean cancer cell line in general. So not just the first prostate, because there exists no cell lines from the Caribbean population. So this is it would be a major accomplishment for us.
Hold on. You mean I am here on the cusp of history with you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I feel it. How is it? Should we keep our fingers and our eyes and our toes and everything crossed that everything will
Just
go?
invite me back.
Oh, that you have. You have it here. But the point I'm excited about this, one, because 98% of the cell lines are for other people apart from ourselves. Yet, an African, whether it's American or otherwise, have a 2-to-1 chance of dying from this same thing. It sounds as if the thing twisted.
And just to also emphasize, for men with advanced prostate cancer, they tend to be reliant on chemotherapy drugs. And what we have found from the research is that the existing drugs that are available are more effective in treating advanced stage cancers among Caucasian men than they are treating cancers from men of African descent. And then you ask yourself why. The fact is that the tools that we're using to understand the disease, the tools that we're using to treat the disease are Caucasian tools. So there's this grave disparity. We're not trying to understand the disease among our own people. So we're here trying to bridge that gap, to fill that hole, so we can ensure that when we have our natural products that are deemed anti-cancer compounds, they first of all are effective in treating the cancer here at home.
You know, I'm going to answer this question, and I don't want to duck this one. All right? What are these things that you're talking about that are anti-cancerous? These own domestic things that we have. So give me some example of what are them. All right.
So compounds are ingredients that you get from the trees. Any tree. Trees in general produce what we call secondary metabolites, and this is also towards a defense mechanism against predators like you. I'm just joking. And so when we can get these compounds that they produce, we can test them for biological activities. Let me put things into perspective. An unripened fruit isn't very pleasant to us, right? It tends to be bitter, sour, and usually that taste is because of the elevated levels of what we call tannins. And this is intentionally so that we don't eat the fruit until it is in its ripe stage. So tannins, in conjunction with other compounds,
how do you spell that word?
Tannins, tannins, right? For my PhD work, we looked at quashinoids, and these compounds were isolated from the plant called Castella macrophylla. So we didn't look at...
No, there's got to be a country name for that.
We didn't look at the plants that were investigated. So for that aspect of my work, it was done in collaboration with the Department of Chemistry. One of their focus is the identification of novel compounds. Towards that end, they go find trees that are not popularly known or used in the country. So for my work, we didn't look at or investigated compounds from popular known trees. So I can tell you, however, Castella macrophylla is related to the bitterwood plant. And so bitter wood produces similar compounds called quashinoids, and so they're similar to some of the compounds we looked at.
Quashinoids and tannins and
Coumarins. We looked at prenylated bromoquinols, polyisoprenylated benzophenones. We looked at a wide array of compounds.
Are they available locally in JNN?
No, they're not. These are still at the lab stage, and it is important for us now to take the research all the way that it needs to go. Just if we can go to clinical trials, then yes. Once we can confirm the bioactivity or the efficacy of these compounds, then we can say, hey, we need to go mass produce these compounds.
I'm going to ask you to hold on for me as we take another break, and we'll be right back on Insight as we focus down on cell line research. Be back. I'm learning a whole lot. Major lecture here today. Hope you are learning as much. The 90% down the road that you are, Doc, help us in terms of when will I get my other 10%. 90% is a good A, but hey, this 100% we need here.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
It is said that 1 year in the life of a business person is equivalent to 10 years in the life of a scientist. This 10% can take us a couple of months, and it can take us years. Yes. Meaning, even though we have reached this stage and we get to the next stage, what if the cells all die? What do? We have to start back from square one. But we are hopeful that all the expertise that have been garnered until today, and the carefulness in which we have been approaching the research, we will get there within short order. The fact is that this research is, 3 years old? Mm-hmm. And
you say you've come a long way.
We have come a long way, in my opinion, in a relatively short period of time, because we are not in a first world setting. That's one thing there. So we are resource stricken. I mean, we don't have things readily available to us. If we run out of a reagent, today it takes us sometimes 2 to 3 months to get it. If you're in the States, you run out of something today, within 2-3 days you can,
overnight on Amazon,
or overnight you can get it. So understanding these challenges, I ensure that my students are pragmatic, so we don't wait until things run out. We put things in place to ensure that we are always on top, and that has contributed to one of the reasons why, even though this is a high-risk research, in 3 years we are at this point. So we are hopeful that we can wrap this research up before the year ends.
Looking forward to that. Tell me though, you're into research, and you're in a competitive marketplace, no doubt. You're about to be first in something, and other research areas would like to be first. How do you protect your research? Patents, non-disclosures. I got some stuff out of you a while ago. I never thought I would. Thought you, Mr. Sharp, those are patents and non-disclosures, because there's a real world out there, mm-hmm. In terms of wanting to get to the line first, and the benefits that will come from it, drugs.
That is
make
true.
your money back. How do you go about that? Help us in terms of, do you have the need for patents and non-disclosure clauses that people in your lab signs? How do you do? If you have not done that, shouldn't you?
Well, once we have successfully developed the cell line, we will need to patent it. Before we patent it, we will need to authenticate it. What does that mean? We will need to carry out some tests to say that, okay, this is what we say it is. So this is prostate, and it's not breast. And it is a novel cell line and not something that is already existing that we're claiming. So we have to first authenticate it, and once we have gotten that certificate of authentication, the next thing is to patent it. So we are actually in dialogue with the office at the University of the West Indies, who play a role in that. And so once we are ready, they will engage the patenting process, and we won't be able to, I suppose, sell or distribute the cells until that such time. We can always publish before that. We can publish it, the data, and ascribe a name to the cells. No one can actually do anything until we give them the actual cells to do work on. So the students in my lab, there's an agreement. So they come, they work, and at the end of that work, they get a degree. So that's the benefit that they have. Any work that is going to be done on the cells post that time would have to be something that's agreed upon by me. So there is that understanding that is there.
I have seen in the newspapers that there are other persons who are researching in cancer, and they've found things about, and they've gotten things to go about prostate cancer. Does that conflict, or does that help your work in terms of?
There's no conflict there. Cancer research in Jamaica, as it is directed on, one, investigating the same products, different products on established cell lines. And as I said to you before, most of these established cell lines are Caucasian cell lines. So once our cell lines are developed, it provides an avenue for us to work together even more. So if it is that you're working on a plant extract or compounds that we haven't worked on, we could take your compounds and we could assess the efficacy of those on our novel cell lines. And also we can compare the results to the established ones. Are our compounds more potent in killing our novel cells than the established ones? And if they are, why? How? So then we have to take steps to understanding other questions. And so towards that end, I'm in the process of applying for additional grants so we can expand the research.
Help me with that, the grant, because all of this I saw was a ching-ching and the money going, you know, and this is not something that an investor will say, well, I'll get a return on my investment.
Right away?
Right away.
No.
So how do you go about getting these grants to continue? Who do you trigger, you know, get goosebumps into when you come to them and say, yes, let's do this? How do you?
Did I give you goosebumps earlier?
Yes. Okay. I'll come up with mine, don't fund me.
Right. So this research, so far from my experience, it tends to spark a lot of interest. And not just interest, but persons want to know that the people who are approaching them, requesting the money, will actually deliver. And so it's also important for you to, as a research scientist, to develop a track record. Okay, so I did say last year that I was going to do this, and I did accomplish it. Now I need to do the next step. And also it's important for you to have a vision. And so whenever I go to a granting agency, I express my vision to them. What is my vision? Why am I doing this? My vision is to ensure that we can develop anti-cancer compounds that can treat cancers across the world, but firstly be effective to treating cancers among our own people. My vision is so that we here in Jamaica can have a first world anti-cancer center. So we don't have to always be going overseas to be trained. We don't have to always be sending our products overseas to be tested. Why can't we do it here? We have the brains here. And so towards that end, stepwise, I'm getting closer to that vision. So the National Health Fund funded the research that we're doing here. They gave us $7.5 million. The university gave us $1.5 million. And so I am back now saying, okay, we need more work. We're developing the cell lines. And once that's done, and we hope it will be done before the year end, we need to now take the next step in drug development. We need to be able to assess the efficacy of these compounds in animal models. We can inject the animal models with our cell lines. We can observe the growth of the tumor because you have specialized equipment where you can see the growth of the tumor. You can then feed those animal models with the compounds that you're testing, and you can observe is the tumor shrinking or is it not shrinking? If it is, what is the toxicity level like? Are the animals okay? And if they are, then yeah, we have found a lead drug that we can now take to clinical trials. So there's a process, there's a step, and so I'm now at the stage where I want to develop a preclinical lab.
Yes. You're doing two things. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are not only dealing to get to the immortal stage of the cells, but you're also coming up with some solutions, if you may, to cancer using our own local thing.
So the entire thing is developing treatments. We call them individualized therapies. We are transitioning from the era of the lock and key approach to treating diseases, where one drug is used to treat everybody's cancer. That's not working. Pharmaceutical companies recognize that's not working. So we need to understand diseases among different ethnic groups, different nationalities, and be able to, when someone comes in the clinic, comes to the hospital, assess, okay, even though both of you have cancers, I'm going to give you drug A, I'm going to give you drug B, because drug A will be more effective to treating the cancer you have, and drug B will be more effective. So for me, I'm interested in developing anti-cancer drugs that will be effective to treating prostate cancer among men of African descent. And it entails a lot of dimensions, and understanding the dimensions that are involved, I can systematically and strategically build that as I go along, and that is what I'm doing.
You keep referring to your students. Who are your students? How many of them are working on this at the same time? I know you're a lecturer as well. I mean, do you have enough hands?
So I'm relatively early in my career.
Clearly.
And I currently have 4 students. And my first student, his name is Henkel Valentine. He's the one who is now working on the prostate cancer cell line research. My most recent student, Shanique Clark, she will be embarking on developing breast cancer cell lines. So currently she's understudying Henkel to see how he does things. And so when she starts her research, which we hope will be in a couple months' time, she will be more comfortable and confident to take that on. My other 2 students are looking at the effect of different fungal metabolites on established cancer cell lines. So if we notice or observe any of those products, then we can test them on our novel cell lines. So there's an entire system going on, and we're all benefiting from each other's work.
Indeed, and we're benefiting from it, but who is this woman? From whence did she come? Why is she involved with all of this? She could have done so many other things, I'm sure. But we'll be right back on Insight as we focus and drill down more. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Insight Lecture on prostate cancer and the plans to find out something that's we can deal with as a people in our country for our people, using our medicines to deal with our people. That's my understanding of the vision from this doctor here, PhD, who is doing all this type of research, and it's time that we get to know her. Dr. Simone BADAL McCREATH, from whence did you come? Where were you born? Which parish?
I believe I was delivered at the Jubilee Hospital in Kingston. I was raised at 9 Blackwood Terrace, which is one of the inner city communities of Blackwood Red Hills Road. My dad, who is brilliant, Lloyd Badal, he owned a shop, and he raised us with some very strong values. He raised us to, first of all, believe in the Lord, to allow those or that belief in him to guide what we do, how we think, how we treat people. He also raised me to be someone who aimed high and who anything that I touched or approached, I did it with everything that I had. I did the best at it. So thank you, Daddy, for that. My mom, Elsa Ramsey, she is a high school teacher. She's very vivacious. She has a very strong personality, but she's also very kind. And I also was raised with my stepmom, who too has a big heart and is also in her rights a wonderful human being. So, yep.
Boy, I tell you, I feel like I want to cry. But but help me though. I want to know what it is, and I'm glad you started out even with your daddy. Mm-hmm. You know, girls start out with their daddies, of course. But the issue of what prepared you for this. So you had that foundation, God in your life, good examples. What school did you go to? Which high school? Which primary school? Because we always have this high school thing, as if
the primary school.
Yeah, as if primary school.
I went to St. Richard's Primary.
Oh, down the road, and radios over there. Hey, it really shows you that even a government school can.
Wow.
You can't get your pick them in that school, you know.
Exactly.
Yep. And they got you in because you live near. Anyway.
I went to St. Richard's, and then I transitioned to Meadowbrook High School.
You always stay close to Calabar, but I won't get into that. I won't get into that. Yeah.
And at Meadowbrook High, I was placed. So in grade 9, they assess you. So they look at how well you score. And back then, persons who scored relatively high grades or averages were automatically streamlined in the sciences. And so I was automatically among the worthy candidates streamlined there.
Left brain people.
And I remember wanting to be a medical doctor. No, the question is, why did you want to be a medical doctor? Did you really want to help people? Or was it the allure of the prestige that was associated with it? And I must admit that perhaps the latter was true for me, the allure. I mean, at that age, was I exposed to research or the myriad of different professions that you could get from the sciences? I wasn't. And I wasn't even exposed to the business side. So I think everything that happened, I think the Lord predestined or closed doors that I wasn't supposed to go through, open doors. Because when I went to UWI, the plan still was to do medicine. And in my final year, a certain professor blew me off my feet. Professor Raghaber Singh, he came in, he taught, he just had a chalk. Every single thing was from memory. The way he delivered, it just incited this desire to want to work with him. And so I approached him and I said, can I do my master's with you? He said yes, and so I did a master's of philosophy with him, which lasted 2 years, and that was focused on diabetes. And I realized I enjoyed research. I also at the time recognized that I didn't want to just do research that sat on the shelves or engage in research that were just publication worthy. I wanted to engage in something that was transformative. And so at that moment I said, okay, you need a business background. And so I did an MBA. Nice. I had hoped to do my PhD overseas in Cambridge. I got an acceptance, but the heart just wanted to come back home. Mm-hmm. It wanted to go back there, but it ended up staying here, and here I am with you. Yeah. I ended up doing the PhD, and that led me here today. So I could have been happy doing something else. I don't know, but what I can tell you is that what I'm doing now gives me so much fulfillment to know that I can participate in something that can help another human being. What more can we live for?
Pioneer to boot. Help me though, you've smoothly and nicely gone over it. And when I got to UWI, oh no, not so fast, ma'am. Your father was a shopkeeper and your mother, how you got to UWI? It's expensive, I know.
So he was a very, very smart, shrewd shopkeeper. He's also very brilliant when it comes on to money. Before that, he was an accountant.
There you go, left brain people.
But my dad taught us the value of saving, investing. He taught us the value of not engage in all the appetites that you may have. You may want a car, but can you afford a car? If you spend this money in the car, then what is left? What will you do? And so he saved, he invested, and so he imparted that to us, and because he saved and invested, he was able to pay for my tuition cash.
Nice. Proper man. Let's go for it. And
So anybody, anywhere, you can achieve it, but you just need to know that what is your long-term vision, and if it is that you want something later on, it means that you probably will have to sacrifice certain things today. And I think a lot of us miss that. We want to enjoy every single thing today. Well, it means that there are certain things that you won't have in this lifetime.
Sacrifice is important. Strategic sacrifice, that is.
Yes.
Help me. I listened to you carefully. You must understand that. And you said he told us. Who are us?
Myself and my siblings. Okay. So I have many siblings.
You have many siblings.
My baby sister Ruth Badal, she's now in Australia. She should be back next month.
Please, that is the world under or something.
She's at Hillsong. She finished her diploma in I believe it's divinity. She did some, oh my goodness. She was at Hill. Do you know what Hillsong is? Hillsong is a college, and they have this noteworthy worship group called Hillsong.
Okay. She's gone the path.
So she's
a religious. Very well.
My brother is at UTechno. He's doing his master's, so he finished his bachelor's in engineering.
There you go.
Brilliant guy.
Not a left brainer. Okay.
Brilliant guy. Ruth she's exceptional at singing. She's exceptional at anything crafty. So we have different pockets here.
Yes.
And I have two sisters overseas. And on my mother's side, I have a sister and two brothers.
Yes.
So there are a couple of us.
Yes. So don't come mess with you. You got an army there going. Yes. You have explained the process of the cell and how you want to get to mortality. Or immortality, that is. No mortality, please. Mm-hmm. It's a process. And so you have also gone through a process. But along the road, whether you're Muslim, there are Meccas along the way, because we all want to go to Mecca as a Muslim. We all want to go to Jerusalem as Christian. There are a lot of Jerusalems along the way. What have been your highest points, some high points to date that you can say, yes, this is really worth it? And alas, what have been some of the moments that Simone has looked into herself and said, OMG, I can't. Talk to me, Simone. Doc Simone.
I am going to say one of those moments was when I was on a plane in 2016 traveling to Massachusetts to vacation for 2 weeks. And while I was there, I was actually looking back at my life, looking back at my achievements, and recognizing that everything I had thought or wanted I had achieved. And I felt a sense of pride and a sense of deep fulfillment. But then in that moment, I said, okay, it's now time to give back. And I think that was one of my aha moments. What is the purpose of getting a PhD if nobody benefits from it? What is the purpose of getting an MBA? And so in that moment, I said, okay, yes, my research is giving back, but I want to give back outside of being paid. And so I conceptualized, the idea of a foundation that would help persons who have dropped out of high school to go back and get their C6. And we call it the Anti-Cancer Research Jamaica Foundation.
Anti-Cancer Research Jamaica
Simply
Foundation.
Just because I'm doing cancer research, we just brand it as a part of it.
It makes sense. What's that? This is to help girls and boys, or girls?
Anybody. So we have
out of high school, not just because you drop out, but for...
Well, we have to vet you.
Yes.
We have to vet you to recognize a sincere need, and not just a need. Will you make use of the resources that we will provide? And so we have a website. It's www.acrjfoundation.org.jm. And we have already started to help. We have raised I believe, close to $1 million Jamaican dollars. It is our hope that we can, if a person is in need, pay for tuition, pay for C6. If they need further transportation, lunch money, we can provide, depending on what we have at the time. So I expressed my sentiments to several friends and family members, and the enthusiasm was overwhelming. You know, there's a deep desire in each of us to want to give back. Some of us listen to it, some of us don't. And so I would say that was a critical moment, because that moment transformed the way that I viewed my place in the world more, solidifying the fact that I am here not for Simone. I am here for somebody else.
You know, alas, our time has come. But I think that last point is where I think I want to leave it. You ask yourself, what's the point in having a PhD and an MBA if you're not going to really give back? And guess what? It was that Christian value that came through. And that is so important. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living
it would be worth
not be in
it.
vain. And we guys out there with prostates, and hopefully not prostate cancer, but depending on the research, you and your blessed 4 students, please
work. We will work hard.
We're behind you, and anytime you can even come and co-host the show with me.
Thank you for having me.
It really was our pleasure. And that's it for Insight today. Until next time, pleasant viewing.